This is a figure review for Action Figure Resource, and it's Lion-O from the Thundercats Classics 8-inch line from Bandai. This figure was purchased from the Forbidden Planet International website, and you can find my review elsewhere on Action Figure Resource. I was a huge fan of the original LJN toy line in the 80s, and now after years of waiting through He-Man, G.I. Joe and Transformers resurgence of interest, Bandai finally released a contemporary line paying homage to these classics. It ties in with the interest generated by the new Thundercats TV show, which is fantastic, I might add. One of the first issues, as I mentioned on my website review, is the multiple lines associated with the license. There are 3.75-inch scale figures based on the new show, 3 6-inch lines, one for the new show, one for the old, and a line of non-posable stactions based on their 80s likenesses, this line of 8-inch classics, and a 14-inch mega scale based on the classic series. So they have all fans catered for, but if you like all the figures, it's hard to know where to start. I've gone for the 8-inch classics because they're modelled on the figures I loved in the same scale with contemporary paint schemes, sculpts, accessories and articulation. Right from the off, I'm going to predict that this line will not flourish like the others. They're catering for a niche market of particularly nostalgic toy geeks like myself, and crucially the scale is way off what's currently popular. Put Lion-O here next to the Star Wars scale 3.75-inch and he's a giant. Even 6-inch Marvel Legends look like particularly thin children next to this beast of a figure. I have Tygra as well, and I will be thankful if Bandai ever produce a Mum-Ra, a Panthro, or in extreme unlikelihood, my personal fan favourite, Hachiman. The figure was delivered extremely well packaged in a box with plastic balloon wrap. The packaging itself is bright and colourful, evoking the LJN line without going for the basic card and blister that was the standard back then. One of the best aspects of the box is that, like many DC Direct and Play Arts figures, you can repackage your figure with the minimum of fuss, which gives you a lot more display options and will significantly up the resale value. Accessories include 2 spare hands, one of which is the awesome claw shield, finally rendered in gold and looking like it's from the armoury of the Lord of the Thundercats, rather than a clip-on red hand warmer of the original. Alas, the light-up eyes of his predecessor did not make the 21st century. It was a neat idea, especially as the battery resided in a plastic power ring which you had to touch against his back. It's also missing that lever that would make his arms slash up and down wildly. However, the benefits of this absence are a more articulated, posable torso and ball-jointed head and neck, and eyes that look like the character in the cartoon rather than glassy orange orbs, so it's actually a benefit in the long run. His legs, arms, knees, elbows, wrists, waist, shoulders, thighs and ankles pivot much like Marvel Legends, but unlike many floppy figures in that line, he holds his pose with chunky feet and tight limbs. The paint scheme is superb with a nice metallic tinge to his belt. One issue is that these ankle joints are orange within blue boots, which looks odd. It's not something that affected Tygra, and it seems such an eye-catching and basic mistake that you wonder why nobody noticed it in R&D. He also has the number 327800901 and a big CE stamped in clear white on his butt, which is a little annoying. No excuses for these two decisions, that could have been better thought through. As I mentioned, there are 4 spare hands, but once I'd switched them to the sword holding and claw shield varieties, I stopped. In the past I've had Street Fighter figures' wrists break off at the peg while trying to switch their hands out. It's a neat idea, but the parts involved are usually too delicate for that kind of strain. Now, I've heard that putting the figure in the freezer for an hour first helps as it keeps the plastic rigid so it won't tear, but I still don't consider this worth the risk. I am taking a single point off the final score for these delicate hands, the orange patches on his ankles and his inexplicable white butt stamp. Lion-O comes with a short dagger version of, and a fully extended version of, the classic Sword of Omens. Once again, this scores major points on the original, which only had the full sword, and for some reason it had a red hilt and a silver Eye of Thundera, which makes no sense at all. This version has a lovely, sharp, red, clear Thundercats logo on the sword and indeed on Lion-O's belt, which makes a huge difference. It would have been nice to get the blue and gold detail on the hilt of the sword, but plain silver is acceptable, and exacting custom figure enthusiasts can of course go to town painting theirs. The swords are made of a flexible, rubbery plastic which conversely stops them from ending up bent irrevocably out of shape inside the packaging, something that's happened for me with Masters of the Universe figures, Marvel Legends and other lines in the past. Its fluid nature means it returns to its straight form easily and maintains it. You can also slot the short sword into the claw shield, which is awesome. Even better, if you're willing to swap out hands, Lion-O can wear the claw shield with the sword attached to his belt. It's a fiddly process, but it would look great for display, and yes, the sword holder can be removed from his belt line. One thing I noticed, and this was true of the original series as well, is that Lion-O has 5 fingers on each hand. The claw shield has 4. So when he puts it on, where does his other finger go? Answers on a postcard, please keep them clean. In summation, this is pretty much the best that the classic figure could be. It doesn't stray far from the design of the original, it takes several cues from the animated Lion-O that LJN did not manage back in the day, and even if they never make another figure in this line, the Lion-O and Tygra strike the perfect balance between rosy-eyed nostalgia and intuitive modern design. In short, if you ever held and loved an original Thundercats figure when you were a child, you owe it to yourself to check this figure out. Rating 9 out of 10.
Thundercats!
Thundercats are on the moon. Thundercats are loose. Feel the magic.
Action, figure, resource, your online home. Action, figure, resource, your one-stop shop. If you got the questions.